Something is wrong in hip-hop this week, and every single person with a functioning pair of ears already knows it, even if nobody with a microphone has the spine to say it out loud yet. Because this week did not just deliver a rough news cycle for the culture. This week delivered a body count. Drake is being publicly accused by a young woman named Suede Brooks of sending her messages so terrifying she reportedly did not leave her house for months. Jim Jones almost came to blows with a bouncer at the BET Awards over a chair. Drewski walked into a Joe Jackson skit with Janet Jackson allegedly sitting 15 feet away. Nick Cannon spent the week laughing off a bone marrow conspiracy about his own children. And every single one of those stories, whether the industry wants to admit it or not, is unfolding under the exact same long shadow. A shadow that does not belong to a label, a manager, or a media conspiracy. That shadow belongs to Kendrick Lamar. And here is the part that should stop you dead in your scroll. He is not in a single one of these headlines. He has not tweeted, he has not posted, he has not commented, he has not liked a single thing. He did not have to, because when we get to the industry section of this video, you are going to see the exact business reason his silence is now more valuable than every marketing campaign these guys have running combined. Compton did not just win the beef, Compton renovated the entire building, and nobody sent the old tenants the memo. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Now let me set the table properly, because if you do not understand the exact moment we are standing in, you are going to miss why this week matters more than any week hip-hop has had in the last 5 years. Rewind 24 months. Kendrick Lamar drops Not Like Us, Meet the Grams, and Euphoria in one of the most surgical run of diss records in the history of the genre. Half the industry laughs. Half the podcast circuit calls it too personal, too aggressive, too weird. Corny commentary guys line up on YouTube to insist the man from Compton went too far, got too specific, made allegations he could not back up. The Super Bowl halftime show becomes, per Nielsen, the most watched halftime performance in the medium's history. GNX arrives with no warning and reshapes the entire release cycle conversation. Baby Keem announces Casino for February 2026. PGL Lang keeps building. 9 Grammy nominations for the 2026 ceremony. And then, this week, the culture serves up 4 unrelated stories about 4 unrelated public figures, and every single one of those stories reads like a footnote to a Kendrick Lamar verse. That is not a coincidence. That is what happens when one artist spends a decade quietly setting the standard while everybody else was chasing the trending sound of the month. The question is not whether he engineered this moment. Of course he did not. The question is why the entire genre is now visibly failing the exact tests he already passed on record 2 years ago. And here is the thing nobody in the commentary space wants to touch, because touching it means admitting they were on the wrong side of it. The men who used to control the room are looking around and realizing the room got renovated while they were busy arguing about who deserved which chair. What are we actually watching happen right now? Let me show you. Start with Drake, because the most damning story of the week did not come from a rapper. It came from a reality television personality named Suede Brooks, star of Calabasas Confidential, who publicly detailed what she says happened after she tried to walk away from him. According to reports from the Jasmine brand, Yahoo Entertainment, and multiple outlets covering her podcast appearance, Brooks alleged she received text messages verbatim saying he was going to have, quote, "bitches fold me up." She reportedly said she was afraid to leave her house for months. She reportedly said she was terrified for her physical safety. She reportedly said she was, in her own words, essentially a kid when this all began back in 2022. Now pause. Go back to Meet the Grams. Go back to the specific bars where the man from Compton was accused of being too personal, too accusatory, too specific about the private conduct of one Aubrey Graham. Every corny podcaster with a microphone insisted at the time that it was just rap beef. It was not just rap beef. It was, allegedly, a warning. And this week, the warning walked into a podcast studio wearing a Calabasas Confidential logo and gave a testimony that reads exactly like an appendix to his discography.
Second piece of evidence, the BET Awards live on national television. Jim Jones, co-founder of the Dipset movement, a legacy artist with 3 decades in the game, gets into what circulating clips describe as a heated verbal altercation with a security guard over a chair, while French Montana, Rick Ross, and Max B are on stage performing. A grown man arguing with a bouncer over a chair at an awards show in front of every camera in the industry. Third piece, Drewski, hosting the BET Awards, drops a scripted parody called The Untold Story of Joe Jackson. The Griot, the Jasmine brand, and multiple outlets report Janet Jackson was in attendance. The internet immediately splits, but the credible voices ask the same question. Where was the line? Who signed off? Who thought this was funny? 3 pieces of surface evidence, 3 separate rooms, 3 separate humiliations, and the man who was allegedly warning us about the entire ecosystem 2 years ago has not said a syllable. Do you feel the pattern yet? Because we haven't even gotten to the deeper layer. And oh, do I have more for you. Because if you thought the surface stuff was ugly, wait until you see what the insiders are actually saying behind closed doors, the deleted posts, the whispered PR conversations, the industry veterans who suddenly can't stop referencing 2024. The stands are really not going to like this next part. Stay locked in. Layer 2. The cultural evidence, because the surface stories are one thing, the reactions from inside the culture are what tell you the tectonic plates are actually shifting. First, Nick Cannon. Reports from Complex, Newsweek, and the Breakfast Club coverage confirm Cannon spent this week laughing off a viral conspiracy that suggested he has been strategically fathering 12 children as a bone marrow reserve connected to his lupus diagnosis. Whether the theory is nonsense is not the point. The point is the pattern of behavior. When a specific type of celebrity gets confronted with something uncomfortable, they laugh it off, spin it, turn it into a bit before anyone else can turn it into a lawsuit. Compare that to a man who literally released Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, a 73-minute public therapy session set to music, where he audited his own soul in front of paying customers. Name another rapper who has ever done that. Take your time. I will wait. Second, the Suede Brooks testimony did not exist in a vacuum. Insiders on Twitter and Reddit, particularly r/hip-hop heads, immediately began circulating side-by-side comparisons of her exact quoted language and specific lines from Meet the Grams, the corny commentary channels that spent 2024 laughing at his warnings.
Suddenly went dark this week. Their tweets got deleted, their old episodes started disappearing. Third, the Jim Jones seat clip did not stay a Jim Jones story for long. Within 48 hours, industry veterans on podcasts began quietly connecting it to a much bigger pattern, which is that an entire generation of legacy rappers is being visibly aged out of relevance in real time, and none of them saw it coming. Now, I will be fair. Some people online are pushing back and saying this is just standard award show messiness, nothing systemic, coincidence stacked on coincidence. I hear that argument, and here is why it collapses. 4 unrelated public figures, 0 coordination, 0 shared team, 0 shared PR strategy, and every single one of them fumbled in the exact same week, in the exact same category, on the exact same axis of failure, moral, artistic, or reputational, that our guy from Compton has spent a decade quietly building the standard against. That is not coincidence. That is math. And speaking of math, this is the point where we have to shift gears completely, because the real story is not who fumbled this week. The real story is why the entire business model these guys were operating under is collapsing at the same time. Buckle in. This is where it gets uncomfortable for the labels, because here is what nobody in the entertainment commentary space is willing to say out loud. This is not a bad news cycle. This is a business model correction in real time, and the man from Compton engineered the conditions for it years ago without anybody at the top of the industry noticing what he was doing. Let me pull the camera all the way back. For roughly a decade, the major label system in hip-hop bet its entire portfolio on what I'm going to call the influencer rapper model. The artist is brand, the artist is content mill, the artist is streaming metric, the artist is social media property. The catalog was secondary.
The controversy was primary. The virality was the product. The music was the invoice attached to the virality. Every single major structural decision, from A&R signings to publishing splits to marketing spend, was built around that thesis. And it worked, financially, for a long time. Now here's the second angle, and this is the one the label executives are quietly panicking about behind closed doors right now. PGL-Lang, the company Kendrick Lamar co-founded with Dave Free, was designed from the ground up to be the exact opposite of that model. Long release cycles, zero begging for streams, zero chasing trends, no influencer engagement bait, vertical integration between artist, label, film, and merchandise. Baby Keem's casino rollout, dropping February 20, 2026, was announced with a track list, a tour, and no gimmicks, because the company does not need gimmicks, and the standard PGL-Lang established has now infected the expectations of the audience itself. Fans have been retrained. When they look at Drake's ongoing rollout situation, when they look at Jim Jones fighting a bouncer, when they look at Drewski's PR fire, they are unconsciously measuring all of it against the ceiling PGL-Lang raised. The influencer rapper model was built to service a version of the audience that no longer exists. The audience got educated, and the education was not accidental. It was, allegedly, engineered through 15 years of one artist refusing to participate in the industry's worst instincts. If you're a label executive who spent the last decade betting on the influencer rapper model, admitting he won is admitting your bets were catastrophically wrong. If you're a podcaster who built a career mocking his introspection, admitting he won is admitting you were on the wrong side of history. If you're an artist who spent your career chasing what he refused to chase, admitting he won is admitting your entire framework was manufactured to protect the guys who couldn't actually deliver. Nobody wants to admit that, so they stay quiet. They refuse to say his name, they change the subject, and they hope you don't notice. And here's the truth bomb, the part I've been building to since the first sentence, the part that is going to reshape how you look at every single headline that drops for the next 12 months. Kendrick Lamar's silence this week is not silence. It is, in effect, the most sophisticated album rollout in modern rap history, and it's happening without a single piece of official marketing being deployed. Think about what that means. Every accusation embedded in Meet the Grams is now being corroborated, allegedly, in mainstream news testimony by the women themselves. Every claim about integrity built into Mr. Morale is now being confirmed by the visible failure of his peers to meet the same standard on national television. Every warning about the influencer rapper model is now being confirmed by lawsuits, award show meltdowns, and PR disasters landing on other artists week after week. The news cycle is doing the promotional work an album cycle used to have to do for free with a bigger platform than any label could buy, and with the credibility of third-party sources instead of paid marketing. That's not a rapper anymore. That's a standard the entire industry is being forced to measure itself against whether it wants to or not. And based on the flailing we're watching this week, most of them don't like what they see in the mirror. That's why the panic is real. That's why the lawsuits keep coming. That's why the tough guy costumes are getting more theatrical by the month, because the men who used to control the room are watching in slow motion as the frame of reference shifts underneath them. This is what it looks like when an artist stops competing with the market and becomes the market's yardstick for everyone else. That's myth building. That's scripture. That's what happens when a decade of quiet discipline compounds into a public reckoning. So let's bring it home, because the picture is now impossible to miss. The hero of this story is not in the news this week because he doesn't need to be. He's home. He's making his art. He's raising his family. He's existing on a plane of consequence that the rest of them can't reach, with a stepladder, a tour bus, and every publicist in Manhattan working overtime. Walk back through the evidence. Drake stands accused, allegedly, of terrorizing a young woman into hiding. The man from Compton stands vindicated for warning us in advance on wax 2 years ago. Jim Jones is being escorted away from a chair. The man from Compton built the whole building. His seat was reserved before he walked in. Drewski walked into a national PR disaster with a Joe Jackson skit. Our guy has spent his career treating black pain like the sacred subject it actually is. Nick Cannon laughed off a conspiracy he can't afford to laugh off. Our guy would have made an album about it, won a Pulitzer for it, and forced a generational therapy conversation about it. That's the contrast. That's the entire story of hip-hop in 2026. In one sentence, one man built a standard, and the rest of them keep visibly failing to reach it. And here's the crystallized truth of this whole week. You can't outrun a standard by getting louder. You outrun it by getting better. And most of them stopped trying to get better a long time ago. The culture is finally catching up to what he's been saying since Good Kid, Mad City. Know your worth. Cut off what's toxic. Refuse to be complicit in your own diminishment. Compton preached that gospel for a decade while the industry laughed. The industry is not laughing this week. The industry is quiet, and the quiet is deafening.
But listen, this is only the start. Because if you think this week was ugly for the influencer rapper model, wait until you see what the next 90 days deliver. Baby Keem's Casino album drops February 20th, 2026, and by every credible industry report, Kendrick Lamar is featured on multiple tracks. The 2026 Grammy ceremony is about to hand the man from Compton a fresh armful of trophies, while half the guys in this video are still trying to explain why they fumbled June. And PGA Lang, per Dave Free's own public statements, is about to roll out its third artist. 3 consecutive events, 3 consecutive reminders of the standard, and every single one of them arriving while the rest of the genre is still trying to clean up this week. If you are not subscribed right now, you are going to miss every single beat of it. Ring the bell, hit like, drop in the comments which story hit you hardest this week and which chapter of the Compton catalog you went back and re-listened to after watching this. I am reading every one of them, and I am pulling the best straight into the next video. And that next video you are going to want to be here for, because there is a specific artist, a legacy name, currently sitting on a rumored deal collapse that nobody in the mainstream press is covering yet. When it drops, the influencer rapper model does not just crack, it shatters. The receipts are already in a group chat somewhere. The lawsuit is already being drafted. And when it lands, you are going to want to have watched this video first, because everything I just told you is the setup for what is coming next. Stay locked in. The seat is already reserved. The stage is already lit. And the man from Compton has not even walked into the room yet.